Theology Part 4. This time around, I'd like to address the form of Christianity that you are probably most familiar with, American Christianity. Now, as a friend of mine said, American Christians can be some very nice people, but their theology is schizophrenic, at best. For one thing, they take a materialist interpretation of the Bible. First of all, you have to realize that materialism is a concept that derives from, but is subordinate to, the absolute truth in Christianity. You see, if you go back to Roman times, if you go back to tribal times, when the gods were emotive, the gods were personalities, plural, there was no absolute truth. Every god had their own truth. The same way that degenerates in our modern society, that you aren't allowed to judge, each have their own truth. Their own truth is whatever they want it to be. Whomever they want to be, they can rewrite their own history to do whatever they feel like doing. But Christianity introduced the concept of the absolute God, of the monotheist. And with this absolute God, there is an objective truth. You have the relative truth of emotions. You have the absolute truth of teleological purposes, unknown purposes, but that we can slowly discover. And in between them, intermediate, you have the objective truth, that there is a particular physical world. We don't know exactly what the physical world is. It's filtered through our senses, but it's definitely there, and we can learn about it. This, of course, leads to materialism. Materialism leading to science. But the irony of it all is that we've become such material worshippers that we forget about the absolute truth. One bias that you will see very frequently, especially amongst science fiction fans, which, I include myself in there, is this idea that we can have perfect knowledge of objective reality. That the Star Trek Enterprise can just put its scanners across a planet and know everything about the planet. The reality is that objective truth is informed by absolute truth, which is ultimately unknowable, but slowly discoverable. And so this objective material world, we can know certain things about it. But you can't know what's happening in your car's engine while it's running. There is no possible way to get your observing faculties in there. There are limits to all of this. And so strict materialism, the idea that we can know everything, that everything has a simple, basic material purpose, is an inadequate theory. And yet, it seems to be the theory applied by the American churches. They take this scientific attitude, they take the Bible, which they have faith in, when you're supposed to have faith in God, not in the written works of man, and they decide the Bible must be completely true. And so then they go and protest a dinosaur dig, and they make asses of themselves. To quote the Tao Te Ching, the Tao which can be written down is not the true Tao. That's the absolute truth. That's God. You cannot write that down. Anything that you can write down, that you can put into a physical form, that is a graven idol. That is precisely what the Bible is forbidding in the Ten Commandments. That you don't try and take God and capture him in the body of an ass or a golden calf. That God, the absolute truth, cannot be simplified to a basic model. We cannot perfectly model God, and we cannot perfectly model objective reality. And so when you try to do that, whether we're talking about the climate change scientists, or we're talking about the American Christians that think they have the last word on morality, what you wind up with is an absolute abomination. You're supposed to have faith in the absolute truth, because without that faith in the absolute, everything else falls apart. But you're not supposed to be trying to capture it. You're supposed to be humble enough to admit that you don't know. Aurini out, folks.